A young man arrives at his family's lakeside cottage and reconnects with a childhood friend who has blossomed into a beautiful woman. But trying to impress her could end up being his undoing. Bastian and his family head to the countryside to enjoy the summer at a friend's lakeside cottage. When they get there, they're puzzled to see that no one is around and the power is off. They get settled in, and the parents even take a dip in the lake, even though it's getting dark. A storm starts brewing not long after they arrive. The family ends up sleeping through the rain later on. Bastian wakes up in the middle of the night and sees a shadowy figure of a young woman standing in front of him. The figure then lies down in the bed next to his, and Bastian drifts off to sleep again. In the morning, he discovers that his mother's best friend, Louise, who owns the cottage, has come back. Bastian asks his mom, Violette, for his gaming console while they're getting breakfast ready, and she tells him it's on the piano where she left it. The young man gets distracted by the piano as his little brother, Titi, is being scolded for munching on chips before breakfast. Louise asks Khloe if she woke the brothers up last night, but Khloe just complains about the boys being in her bedroom. She goes back to her room, but her mom tells her to take the brothers to the port, even saying she'll take her phone if she doesn't. Khloe has no choice but to do what she's told. Titi's having fun by the lakeside, while Bastian keeps an eye on Khloe soaking up the sun. His brother shows him the rocks he collected, and Bastian encourages him to gather more, saying they can sell them. Once his brother heads out, Bastian suggests a drink to Khloe, but she calls him out for lying to Titi to get him to back off. She asks him if he has a phone yet, and he replies that he'll get one on his next birthday. The young man heads back to his spot by the lakeside as Khloe takes off her clothes and dives into the water. She invites him to join her, and Bastian walks into the water, feeling a bit awkward in his clothes. He ends up not swimming, and Khloe jokes that he's scared of the ghost. His confused expression shows he's not familiar with the legend, so Khloe shares the story about how a kid died in the lake years ago. Bastian insists he just doesn't like swimming, saying he nearly drowned years ago. Khloe, on the other hand, is curious about what it feels like to drown. Out of nowhere, the woman dives underwater. Khloe's just lying down in the middle of the road at sundown. The brothers walk up to her and show her the photos they snapped of her in that spot. But the woman says she didn't look dead enough. The next day, the two families hop on a speedboat and cruise across the lake, but Bastian keeps stealing glances at Khloe the whole time. They soon get to Louise's new boyfriend, Brian's house. When asked how the women knew each other, Louise and Violette say their mothers were best friends, so they grew up together. The adults are chatting while the kids are glued to a show, but then Khloe asks Bastian if he wants to do something different. She brings him to a pond up the hill and shares a bottle of wine she grabbed from Brian's house. Khloe asks him to touch hands so they can see how hers is smaller than his, even though she's older. She tells him to touch her fingers, mentioning how they're cold like she's dead. Bastian chuckles at her strange thoughts, making her wonder if he has odd ideas as well. He admits that he does, and for example, he shares how he knows a person can't bite themselves until they bleed because the pain will make them stop. Khloe decides to go for it, but just then, her friend Stan shows up and introduces her to his new buddy, Oliver. The guys begin chatting about Khloe's recent breakup, but they aren't really comfortable bringing it up with Bastian around. So, they ask the woman to head somewhere else. Even so, Khloe asks Bastian to come along with them. The group walks through the woods, and Oliver shares that he's Brian's son. This brings up Brian and Louise's relationship, and Stan starts to wonder about how intimate they've become. When they get to the lake, Stan jumps in, and Khloe tells Oliver that her mom is likely going to break up with his dad since she hasn't been in a serious relationship for a while. Oliver really hopes they can stay together because he genuinely likes Louise. Out of nowhere, Stan yells and bolts out of the water. He says he felt something grab his ankle in the water and thought it was a ghost. But his friends believe he's just messing with them. Stan challenges them to jump in the water if they think he's lying. Bastian decides to head back to the cottage since Khloe and Oliver are joining him, not wanting to feel left out. He's out in the woods by himself when he suddenly hears a voice coming from somewhere. Noticing no one around, Bastian picks up his pace, and suddenly Khloe leaps onto him, giving him a scare. She chooses to head back home with him instead, so they share her wine bottle together on the way back. When they get to the cottage, Bastian starts feeling sick from the liquor, so Khloe helps him to the bathroom. Then she leads him into the shower to get cleaned up. He was surprised when she joined him in the tub and started washing him. Bastian feels more drawn to Khloe because of their closeness, especially when she starts washing herself too. Late at night at Louise's cottage, Bastian wakes up and heads to get a glass of water. He suddenly hears something outside, so he heads out to the lake and spots Khloe bathing in the darkness. The next day, the family gets ready for a picnic, but Khloe is still in her room, fast asleep. The others hang out and have fun until Khloe finally wakes up in the afternoon and takes her bike for a ride. Bastian is thinking about borrowing a bike from the cottage, so Roman, his dad, fixes the bike. While this is happening, they catch Khloe having a heated argument on the phone. That night, Bastian asks his mom about the story of someone who drowned in the lake. Violet asks her friend about it, but Louise insists that Khloe just made up the story. One afternoon, while Bastian is enjoying his music by the port, someone in a white cloth walks up to him. As soon as it gets to him, he freaks out and shoves the figure into the lake. Bastian calls out to the figure floating in the water, but it doesn't move at all. Out of nowhere, Khloe pops up from under the cloth, giving Bastian a hard time for not making an effort to save her. She invites him to a party, and later he helps her get ready for it. While she looks for some clothes, Bastian can't help but notice her body. She encourages him to pick out something different to wear, even throwing him a shirt he can use. Bastian has no choice but to change into the shirt with her help. She tells him to turn around while she changes clothes. He tries to act tough by saying he's seen a woman's body, but Khloe tells him he needs to earn the right to see hers. They grab another white cloth and then head out. While walking, Khloe wonders if they'll become ghosts after they die. Bastian says they might not have a choice. The woman shares her belief that ghosts don't realize they're dead. They arrive at the party and Khloe offers her guest a drink. She encourages him to find someone he likes and wonders what draws him in. At that moment, Oliver spots them and takes them to the backyard where Stan and their friends are hanging out. The guys begin sharing some iffy videos with each other, and Stan even suggests that Bastian can watch, ignoring Khloe's objections. Bastian doesn't really like what he sees, but he acts like it doesn't bother him. Oliver points out that he and Khloe look alike, so the woman starts treating her friend like a brother. As the night goes on, Khloe sees her ex-boyfriend Jackson with someone new. This makes her drink more and say yes to Oliver's invitation to dance. She drags Bastian with her as they dive into the crowd dancing to the music. Bastian, in a ghost mask and feeling the vibe, gets all confident and starts showing off his moves to the crowd. Soon he gets tired of dancing, so he steps back and watches Khloe have fun with Oliver. Bastian, feeling a bit jealous, heads back to the crowd but ends up getting elbowed in the nose by one of the dancers. As his nose bleeds, he notices Oliver getting a lot closer to Khloe. Bastian steps outside the party to calm down and bites his hand, trying to make himself bleed to prove something, but it doesn't help. He comes across a dead deer on the road looking like it got run over. Bastian just brushes it off and keeps heading home. As he sleeps in, he wakes up to realize he got a little too excited from his dream. He tidies up in the bathroom, but just as he's about to get dressed, he hears Khloe coming home. He quickly runs to his bed, just a blanket wrapped around him, right before the woman walks into the bedroom. He asks about the party, and she tells him they stopped dancing not long after he left. The neighbors complained about the noise, so they had to wrap up the night. Khloe mentions she ran into her ex-boyfriend there, which leads Bastien to ask about the reason for their breakup. She asks him to come over to her bed so they can chat without waking his brother, and Bastien makes sure to use the blanket to stay covered. Khloe tells him that Jackson broke up with her because she wouldn't do what he wanted. Even then, he was spreading rumors that they had already been intimate. Bastien, feeling curious, asks her if she's ever been with a man, and she replies, no. She heard that the first time can make them bleed, and she thinks that's gross. Bastien mentions that his brother gets nosebleeds a lot, so he's pretty used to seeing blood. Khloe laughs, realizing that's not quite it. As they get ready for sleep, Bastien begins to rise, but Khloe asks him to stay and even cuddles up to him. The next day, Khloe tells Bastien, who's in a ghost costume, to pose for a spooky picture. They try to bite their hands until they bleed to show that it's possible, but they still can't manage it. They end up talking about their biggest fears. When Bastien mentions that it's satisfying himself in front of his parents, Khloe just laughs. She jokes that she thought he was scared of water, and to show he's not, he jumps into the lake, with a woman pushing him to go deeper and deeper. Khloe pretends to show herself to him if he ventures further into the lake, trying to encourage him. When Bastien goes further, he suddenly sees her running back to the woods, which makes him head back to shore. He's not too happy to see Khloe chatting with Oliver, so he decides to head back home by himself. Khloe comes back later and quickly changes her clothes before she ends up crying in her bed. Bastien grabs some ice cream to cheer her up. That lifts her spirits a little, and she opens up about her biggest fear, not fitting in and feeling alone. Bastien tells her she's not alone because she'll always have her ghost with her. He admits her fear is better than his, and Khloe says his fear is the worst she's heard of. Khloe decides to show that her fear isn't so bad by taking a moment for herself before calling out to her mom. Bastien feels awkward about this. When he hears Louise coming up the stairs, he quickly hides in the closet, not wanting to get caught watching Khloe like that. He hears that when Louise gets there, Khloe switches the topic and asks what's for dinner. This annoys her mom, so she jokes about serving a rat. Once she's gone, Bastien comes out of the closet, and Khloe can't help but laugh. As the sun sets, Khloe and the brothers dive into a puzzle just as Brian and Oliver show up. The two join them for dinner, but Bastien stays at the patio table, not wanting to watch Khloe get close with another man. Later on, he hangs out with Oliver and Khloe while the woman shows off the ghost photo they supposedly took. Oliver is curious about why she's into the ghost story since it isn't real, but Khloe is adamant that it feels real to her. Oliver still thinks it's kind of childish to believe in a ghost story. Khloe decides to step away for a drink, leaving the two guys by themselves. Oliver takes the opportunity to suggest that Bastien should head to bed, but the younger man declines, not wanting to leave Khloe alone with him. Oliver brings up how Khloe seemed to have revealed herself to Bastien earlier, and he wonders if they've done it. Bastien says he had something, and this gets Oliver to praise him. Khloe comes back with drinks and proposes a contest to see who can bite themselves until they bleed. Later, Bastien washes the blood from his hand, as it seems he was the one who did it. As he gets ready for bed with Khloe, she confesses that she doesn't want him to go. Bastien shares that suddenly, Khloe turns off the lights, takes off her shirt, and lets him touch her. She hugs him before letting him take care of himself in front of her. Afterward, Khloe washes up and turns on the lights, laughing about her encounter with Bastien. This makes him even more fond of her, and he ends up spending the night just watching her sleep. They spend the rest of the summer just hanging out together and getting really close. But soon, Bastien's parents talk about heading back to the city the next day. While having lunch, Khloe gets a concerning message that prompts her to leave the table. Bastien, feeling worried, follows her to the kitchen, but Khloe accuses him of lying before she rushes out. She hops on her bike for a ride to clear her head and doesn't come back until late at night. Bastian hears her come in and pretends to be asleep, but then he sees Khloe just grab her jacket and ride off again. Bastian decides to follow her to a bonfire where she's chilling with her friends. When he sees him, Stan greets him at their hangout and casually mentions the rumors about him sleeping with Khloe. This seems to be what got the woman upset with him. When Khloe sees him there, she decides to steer clear of Bastian. All night, Bastian keeps an eye on Khloe as she gets closer to Oliver, and it's making him feel jealous. The two finally make their way to the woods, and Bastian starts to feel anxious about what might happen between them. He tries to brush this off and just connects with the others, even giving smoking a shot for the first time. Daylight is coming soon, which means it's the last day of Bastian's stay there. He heads to the lake and sees Khloe kissing Oliver. Out of the blue, one of the others asks Oliver if they can swipe some wine from his dad. The others decide to swim across the lake to Brian's house instead of just going straight there. Bastian hesitates, but with the others encouraging him, he carefully gives swimming in the lake a shot. But he's just too slow and can't keep up, and eventually he disappears into the water. After a while, Violet and Roman gather their things and say goodbye to Brian and Louise. Before heading back to the city, they check out the other side of the lake with Titi, where there's a memorial for Bastian, the kid who drowned in the lake in Khloe's story. Bastian's ghost, just like in her story, has a hard time coming to terms with the fact that he's dead. He rushes back to Khloe's home and finds her still grieving for him. Bastian calls out to her, and after a moment, Khloe turns around, as if she can finally hear the boy who brought her ghost stories to life.